ruthless biker kicked a homeless man's dog, an act of cruelty done purely for amusement in the midst of a crowd. Little did he know, among the cold and indifferent faces, one pair of eyes silently observed everything. That man was none other than Keanu Reeves. This single act of injustice set off a chain of unexpected events that no one in that parking lot could have foreseen. What happens when someone dares to confront wrongdoing? Stay tuned. The unfolding of the story will leave you reflecting deeply. If you enjoy heartfelt stories like this, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next extraordinary tale. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. Share your city or country in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow we'll bring you another inspiring story, crafted just for you. The supermarket parking lot bustled as usual. Shopping carts squeaked, people hurried about their tasks, lost in the rhythm of their daily routines. In a shadowy corner, nearly invisible to most, a homeless man sat quietly on the ground. In his hands was a worn-out sign that read, "Please help me and my best friend." Beside him lay a dog with a patchy coat, its calm eyes scanning the surroundings attentively. Every so often, the man reached out to stroke the dog, and it responded with a gentle wag of its tail. A simple gesture filled with a bond so profound it spoke volumes without words. A few weeks earlier, on one of the coldest, loneliest nights of his life, the man had thought he wouldn't make it to morning. He was feverish, exhausted, and without shelter, sitting at that very spot, ready to give up. Then, as if by a small miracle, the dog appeared. It didn't bark or make a commotion. It simply lay down beside him, warming him with its small frame. Its presence seemed to whisper, "You're not alone." When the sun rose, his fever had subsided. Something within him had shifted. From that day forward, the two became inseparable. The dog wasn't just a companion. It was his reason to keep going, his anchor in a world that had otherwise abandoned him. They remained there, in their quiet corner, maintaining their modest existence while the world around them continued in indifference. Until one fateful moment shattered the stillness and changed everything. Suddenly, the roar of a motorcycle echoed through the parking lot, commanding attention. The bike sped in and came to an abrupt stop, its engine growling menacingly, filling the air with a palpable tension. Something cruel and heartless was on its way. The rumble of the motorcycle engine ceased, but the tension in the air lingered, like a storm on the verge of breaking. And then, that small, peaceful corner was shattered. The man who dismounted from the bike was tall and imposing, wearing a worn leather jacket and sturdy boots that thudded rhythmically against the asphalt. He removed his helmet, revealing a face weathered by time and a cold, mocking smile that promised nothing good. His eyes swept across the parking lot until they settled on the shadowy corner where the homeless man and his dog Saturday. He began to walk toward them, each step like the countdown of a clock. He seemed to relish the unease he was causing, aware of the sidelong glances and the way people averted their eyes, unwilling to intervene. When he was only a few steps away from the homeless man, he stopped, tilted his head, and let out a dry, grating laugh. "Oh, look at this," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "A beggar and his dog. I bet the dog's worth more than you are." The homeless man raised his head slightly but immediately dropped it again, avoiding the biker's gaze. His trembling hands clutched the cardboard sign tightly. The dog beside him let out a low growl, its protective instinct kicking in as it stepped between the biker and its owner. "What's the matter, dog?" the biker taunted, crouching slightly as if speaking directly to the animal. "Thinking of biting me? Planning to protect that pile of trash you call your master?" He laughed again, the sound sharp and condescending. "I bet you're the only thing that cares about him." The homeless man's voice was faint, almost inaudible. "Please, just leave us alone." He reached out to hold the dog close as if shielding it. "Leave you alone?" The biker laughed loudly, taking another step forward, his voice laced with cruel delight. "You and that mutt don't belong here. This is a parking lot, not a garbage dump. People like you just get in the way." The man tried to say something, but the words caught in his throat. He bowed his head and gently stroked the dog, which now bared its teeth, its defensive stance only stoking the biker's disdain. "Look at that. It thinks it can scare me," the biker jeered, his eyes fixed on the dog. "I bet it can't even bark properly. A useless animal just like its owner." Then, with a smirk, he lifted his boot, feigning a kick at the dog. The dog instinctively stepped back, and the homeless man cried out, his voice trembling with desperation. "No, please don't hurt him." He straightened up and laughed even louder. "Don't hurt it? Maybe you should teach that mutt some respect. Show it who's really in charge here." The tension in the air grew thicker. His face turned cold, the expression of someone on the verge of acting. He took another step forward, his large shadow engulfing the homeless man and the dog. The smirk on his face was a harbinger of something terrible about to unfold. But before he could do anything, a voice rang out, cutting through the heavy atmosphere. "That's enough." The voice was firm, resolute. The entire parking lot fell silent. Every head turned toward the source of the commanding words. The biker spun around, the contempt on his face replaced by an annoyed curiosity. He squinted, trying to identify the person who dared to interfere. From between the rows of cars, a figure emerged, walking with calm but undeniable authority. His face was instantly recognizable, even to those who weren't avid movie fans. Keanu Reeves. Dressed simply in black jeans, a black t-shirt, and a light leather jacket, he moved with purpose. Each step was deliberate, his expression serious but not threatening. When he was just a few meters away, he stopped and locked eyes with the biker. His gaze was steady, unwavering. "Do you think this is right?" Keanu asked, his voice calm but laced with a quiet power that made the biker falter for a split second. "Who the hell do you think you are?" The biker retorted, trying to mask his unease with arrogance. He sneered, forcing out a laugh. "Oh, of course, the great Hollywood star comes here to preach morality. How pathetic." Keanu took another step forward, completely ignoring the taunt. "This isn't about me," he said, his tone even and measured. "It's about you, and what you're doing to them." He gestured toward the homeless man and his dog, now huddled together on the ground. "They shouldn't even be here," the biker shouted, his voice rising as he tried to regain control of the situation. "They're just taking up space and bothering everyone." Keanu tilted his head slightly, his eyes studying the man in front of him. "So, you think hurting others or an innocent creature makes you stronger? Or does it just expose who you really are?" The biker, clearly unsettled, took a step closer as if to intimidate. "Listen, I don't need a lecture from an actor like you. You might be a big name on screen, but out here you're just another guy." Keanu didn't flinch. "And you're just another man, filled with anger. But your anger doesn't justify hurting others." Keanu's eyes dropped to a bottle partially obscured by the biker's foot. "Nor does it justify driving drunk." The words landed like a thunderclap. The biker faltered for a moment but quickly tried to regain his composure. "You don't know anything about me," he shouted defensively. "Maybe I don't," Keanu replied, his voice calm and measured. "But what everyone here is seeing says a lot about you." The murmurs from the growing crowd began to rise. The weight of public scrutiny became palpable, and the biker realized the situation was slipping out of his control. The tension was thick enough to cut. The biker clenched his fists, clearly torn between confronting Keanu or retreating. Before he could act, Keanu stepped closer, his steady gaze locking onto the biker's eyes with a quiet intensity that seemed to strip away any pretense of strength. "So, what's it going to be?" Keanu asked, his voice low and commanding. It was a voice that demanded a choice, one that could alter everything. The biker's breaths came heavily, his eyes locked on Keanu as though trying to decipher the man who dared to challenge him so openly. The tension between them was nearly tangible, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation. The crowd continued to swell, their whispers turning into audible chatter. Phones were raised, cameras recording the unfolding drama. The biker noticed the lenses aimed at him, and his jaw tightened in frustration. "You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone?" he yelled, pointing an accusatory finger at Keanu, his voice laced with fury and defiance. You might be a movie star, but that means nothing here. Keanu remained composed, his arms relaxed at his sides. I'm not trying to humiliate you, he said, his tone steady and unyielding. I'm trying to stop you from doing something you'll regret later. The biker let out a dry, derisive laugh, dripping with bitterness. Regret? It's easy to talk about regret when you've got millions in the bank. People like you don't know a damn thing about what it's like to live in the dirt. Keanu tilted his head slightly, his gaze never leaving the biker. The anger you're feeling has nothing to do with me or him, he said, nodding toward the homeless man. It's within you. And what you're doing now is just spreading it to people who don't deserve it. Keanu's words seemed to strike a chord, touching something deep within. For a moment, the biker looked away, his expression faltering. But he quickly raised his voice again, trying to reassert control. You don't know anything about me, he shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at Keanu. You think you're some kind of hero saving beggars and their mutts? Pathetic. Keanu stepped closer, now only a few steps away. His voice deepened, carrying an unshakable resolve. What you're doing right now defines who you are. Hurting those weaker than you doesn't fix anything. It just spreads more pain, yours and theirs. The crowd stood silent, hanging on every word. Even the homeless man, who had been keeping his head down, looked up toward Keanu, as though seeing a glimmer of hope. The biker glanced around, taking in the quiet, watchful faces. He clenched his fists, torn between giving in and acting on his simmering rage. Suddenly, he bent down and grabbed something from the ground. A bottle. His eyes blazed with anger as he fixed his gaze on Keanu. The entire parking lot seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. The biker gripped the bottle tightly, his fingers trembling slightly, his labored breathing betraying the inner turmoil consuming him. He looked like he was about to explode, yet amidst the rage, there was a flicker of hesitation, a faint echo of doubt cutting through his fury. You think you can stand up to me? He roared, raising the bottle in a threatening gesture. You think you're better than me just because these people are on your side? Keanu didn't flinch, his eyes locked firmly on the man before him. This isn't about sides, Keanu said, his voice steady and composed. It's about what's right. And what you're doing isn't just wrong. It's dangerous. To yourself, to them, and to anyone else you come across. Keanu's words hit like a hammer, reverberating through the tense atmosphere. The biker tightened his grip on the bottle, but his hand trembled more visibly now, as though the battle raging inside him was tipping toward a resolution. The biker tightened his grip on the bottle, yet he remained rooted to the spot. The air was thick with silence, as if time itself had frozen. You don't know anything about me, he yelled, his voice hoarse and raw. You have no idea what I've been through, what I've lost. So don't stand there and tell me what's right or wrong. Keanu stepped closer, now only inches away, the sharp scent of alcohol wafting from the biker hitting him. Maybe I don't know, Keanu said, his voice low, almost a whisper. But I see a man who's lost his way. And what you're doing right now won't bring you anything. It'll only drag you down further. The biker took a step back, as though Keanu's words had pierced through the armor of his anger. His eyes flickered with a mix of rage and uncertainty as he glanced at the bottle in his hand. Then, as if to reassert control, he raised it slightly, glaring at Keanu. If you think you can stop me, then go ahead and try, he spat, a twisted smile curling on his lips. Before he could act, a sharp whistle tore through the tension, slicing the air like a blade. The biker whipped his head toward the source of the sound, his expression irritated. Keanu turned as well, scanning for the unexpected interruption. From across the parking lot, an older man strode toward them. Dressed in a worn security uniform, his presence was unassuming yet carried an undeniable authority. His steps were steady, each one exuding confidence. Stopping a few meters away, the security guard crossed his arms, his gaze sweeping over the scene. Hey you, the guard called out, his voice firm and composed. Put it down, now. He pointed at the bottle clutched in the biker's hand. Who the hell do you think you are? The biker shouted, his frustration spilling over. Go back to your corner. This has nothing to do with you. It does, the guard replied, his tone unyielding. You're drunk, threatening people and causing a disturbance. I can't ignore that. The biker let out a dry, bitter laugh, but a trace of unease crept into his posture. His eyes darted around, taking in the growing crowd. Faces stared back at him, unwavering, phones held up to capture every second. The weight of social scrutiny loomed over him like a rising tide, threatening to drown him. Keanu seized the moment of distraction, stepping forward once more. His voice remained calm, but it carried the strength of someone in complete control. You can still stop this, Keanu said, his eyes locking onto the bikers. Put it down and walk away before things get worse. You have a choice here. The biker's knuckles whitened as he tightened his grip on the bottle, his eyes darting between Keanu, the security guard, and the homeless man clutching his dog. He looked like he was on the verge of exploding, but something unseen held him back. Ridiculous, he muttered, his voice shaky. All of you think you're better than me. Think you have the right to judge me. Well, I won't let you. He raised the bottle as though trying to prove something to himself and to everyone else. At that exact moment, an unexpected sound pierced the tense silence. The dog, which had been silent all this time, suddenly barked. Sharp, resolute bark that echoed through the parking lot. The abrupt, fierce sound stopped the biker in his tracks, his arm frozen mid-air. All eyes turned to the dog, now standing tall, staring directly at the biker with a courage that far exceeded its small stature. It was as if the dog had decided it would no longer allow harm to come to its owner or anyone else. The biker stood motionless, his expression flickering with surprise before twisting into a sneer. Just a dog, he scoffed, his tone dripping with mockery. You've got to be kidding me. Keanu stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. It's not just a dog, he said firmly. It's a friend. And it seems braver than many of us here. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Leave them alone, someone shouted from the onlookers. The biker's confidence faltered, his eyes darting nervously around as the tide of support for Keanu became undeniable. You think my life is easy? He shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of his own frustration. That beggar shouldn't even be here. Keanu, now just a step away, replied in a gentle yet resolute tone. Maybe this is the only place he has. Maybe all he has in this world is the friendship of this dog. But what you're doing doesn't fix anything. It only spreads the pain further. The words landed with the force of a hammer. The biker hesitated, his grip on the bottle tightening one last time before his fingers slowly loosened. His shoulders slumped, and the fight seemed to drain out of him. I'm just tired, he murmured, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Then, without another word, he turned away, walked back to his motorcycle, climbed on, and sped off, leaving behind a parking lot steeped in reflective silence. Keanu knelt beside the homeless man and his dog. Are you okay? He asked gently. The man nodded, tears streaming down his face, and thanked Keanu. Keanu pulled out a small card and handed it to him. Take your dog to this veterinary clinic, he said. They'll take care of him, and they might be able to help you too. The man clutched the card tightly, his gratitude overflowing. As Keanu stood to leave, the crowd erupted into applause. The man hugged his dog close, the animal a symbol of hope amidst the hardships of life. Sometimes, a simple act of kindness can change a life. Never underestimate the power of compassion, whether it comes from a stranger or a loyal four-legged friend. This story is a powerful reminder of the strength found in kindness, courage, and friendship, even in the toughest circumstances. Have you ever stood up for what's right, even when it wasn't easy? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice could inspire others and spread the values of empathy and community. If you found this story meaningful, share it with your friends and loved ones to help spread the message of compassion and respect. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next heartfelt story, bringing inspiration to you and those around you. Thank you for supporting the channel. Like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with the latest stories. These stories are collected from various sources and do not represent any specific individual or organization. They are shared to promote the human values of kindness and understanding, and have been rewritten with the help of AI. If there are any inaccuracies, we ask for your understanding. Wishing you all the best in life.